Well, hello and welcome back to Explosive Kolonisation. We are in episode 21 at the moment, and for the person that asked before, episode 16 does not exist. I would give an excuse, but I really don't know what I missed. So, yeah. We are now, at the moment, with the landing base, and I'm creating a bit of a boat. Essentially, as people will have seen in the last episode, I found a very interesting place that is up the top of a mountain that has all of the materials I need to build a lot of ships. Now it's at quite a high inclination, as you can see here, but it has everything in one location, so it's a perfect place for a base or a couple of bases, and there's some flat spots there. So what I've actually done is I've put together this boat, and it has all of the materials on board to let the Kerbal survive for a little while, and it has everything I need to build the boat using extra planetary launch pads. So this is my Bison boat, and I'm using a couple of the Lynx propellers. And after a phenomenal amount of travel, as you can see there, it says a day, and yeah, it wasn't far away from it, thank God for MechJib. But we get here, and then as we're heading up the hill, I don't have enough power to get straight up the hill, so I have to go at angles. And I hit the time warp button and that happens. So we lose our wheels and we're stuck because I have no spare parts. So version 2 was created, and then after me being lazy, I thought, oh wait, let's add a plane onto it. And this is actually just an extended version of my first boat, and the plane that's on top was my idea for a recon plane for Lathe, that can literally just fly around the place and take basic science. So I put them together and added 4 more engines, and I came up with a plane that could fly this empty, because yeah, time-wise, as you can see, this only actually took me 33 minutes instead of a day. A Kerbal day, which is 6 hours, but yeah, it's still a day. So, I used the Pathfinder system to try and set up the materials. And there was a bit of a problem with my Pathfinder system, and it kept showing up locked. I don't know exactly what was going on there. But it's been an issue with my base as well, on and off. I can't quite figure out what it is. I've got pilots on board, and yeah, I'm not quite sure. I'm sure Angel will tell me after the video exactly what I'm doing wrong. But after a while I decided just to go along and recycle parts of the base, which dump in the equipment. So I've got the same amount of rocket parts. I've picked up my equipment from the base parts. And I've picked up the life support from the base parts as well. And then instead of detaching this, I actually came up with the idea of just driving it straight up the hills. So we turn the engines on to give us a bit more of extra thrust, but we decide to not take off because of how heavy this thing is. And I just use the propeller craft at a lower rev to get up the hill. Now this is run by some of the safer nuclear generators that are part of the Wild Blue Industries. I'm not sure which one they're part of, but they are absolutely brilliant. I use them an awful lot alongside the near future technologies things, because they have built-in radiators, which is what near-to stuff doesn't have. So it makes it simpler for a little bit less radioactivity. But once we get up to the top of the hill, I have a look around, and then I spend a little bit of time looking for a flat area, roughly flat as you can see. Set down my poles to make sure my base is a good distance away from the craft that's building it, because I don't want that mistake happening again. And then, yep, set it up to build with extra planetary launch pads. And it's going to take a while because it is a fairly big base, it's fairly complete. And I didn't want to attach everything with Kiss, I wanted to just go and have everything ready, so that's what's about to happen. So we pick our build, called the Motherload, because that's what I found here. Set up all our statistics for what we want filled in it. just so I don't get any issues with launching it or things like that. As you can see there, it's not going to take all the rocket parts in this, so I'll still have some craft that I can build afterwards to set off some other things. And then we just set it up to build. I don't want to detach the top plane, although I've built it to detach and carry on its way. I don't want to detach it just yet in case anything ruptures or explodes. I'm playing it particularly safe this time because of how long it took to get out there. But now we are on to another little thing. This is the Estonian launcher. Now the fuel tanks on the bottom of this launcher are actually from Nearties mod again, from near future launch vehicles, and as are the solar panels, near future electrical. But the ship that you can see on the front is the new one that is in the Heisenberg, not the Heisenberg, is in the DSEV mod. So we're using this for a little mission that we've got. We have a recovery mission. And because I want to recover and get a little bit of extra science at the same time. And I also have lost a few of my relay satellites in upgrades and changing about mods. I made this multi-role. So we have a person who wants to land on the moon on this ship. We also have 3 relay satellites that are xenon powered. Not something I often use, but I thought I'd kick them out and then use the rest of the fuel in this to kick us out to the moon, because this lander was built for for Juno, so I figure why not use it to kick out to the moon and give it a trial out there. This is actually the first time I've used it, and as you can see I forgot to put something on the front of it, so it's missing either a docking port or a parachute or something along those lines. But here we go, and a beautiful thing happens as I land. So I just get into an equatorial orbit on the moon, kick out these probes so that I've got 2 relays on the moon. Now the reason I'm leaving them here, I don't particularly need moon relays because I don't have a base going on here at the moment, but it gives me a bit of flexibility for launching because it creates a lower delta V amount that I need if I decide to slingshot them back off the Kerbal. And then after messing up my staging, I destroy some parts and decelerate towards the ground, and this is where a very strange thing happens. I almost never luck out things like this, but I pick a rough landing spot on the edge of a crater, and this, I swear this happened flukily, and as I'm coming down there I notice something and I immediately beeline for it. I was not aiming for this. I am so happy. This is probably the first monument, it's the second monument I found a face on Mars, on Juno, sorry. But yeah, so I found the archway on the moon by sheer accident. I was close enough that I could actually see it as I was landing, so as you have to do with the strange monument, I flew through it. Because why not? And you got to take pictures. So there we go. So we land on the ground on the lunar surface, yeah. Get everybody out, plant flags, do all the sciencey stuff and everything that's expected. So I get a good amount of science, head back into the craft, and then instead of going for a return, going into orbit, I just decide to go for a straight return. So from where I am in the orbit, that's not difficult. We take off, get the correct angle so that we're heading retrograde to Kerbal. I'm just moving fuel about here so that you can actually, so that I can see my delta V amount. Something strange happened with it. But yeah, so it shifts fuel about, launch, and launch straight for an orbit out of the moon's sphere of influence, back to Kerbal. And then because I am running really low on money, I actually set maneuver nodes, and I'm executing them using MechJeb to get it really precise so that I get as close as possible to the KSC. I'm still hit or miss with this, but in general I'm getting not too bad. I start sort of flailing about here. I know that I'm not gonna hit the KSC perfectly, so I do a burn as I'm re-entering to try and get me somewhere close to on the ground. And as it happens, it turns out this craft is slightly unstable. For some weird reason, as it goes transonic, it flips around head first, which is kind of dangerous. But I think it's a problem to do with time warp. This isn't the only time it happens in this video, and it's happened a few times since then. But there seems to be some sort of issue with passing through transonic, specifically when you're in time warp. I don't know what it is. But yeah, landing gear out. Good, lovely landing gear. Angel did a beautiful job modelling this thing. We will see it again, like now. So we have a couple more things that we want to do. A few more missions. I have to take people orbits through the moon. So I decided to launch up to the station so I can also do a bit of crew retrieval. So we've seen the launch before, the only difference being I've got a docking port on front. We slow down at the ISS that's in orbit of the moon, and then just go for a standard dock. And I'll just showing you mech jib here, just because I'm being a fair bit lazy. A little bit time warp to get it all lined up. Changing my settings there. I always drop the meters per second manoeuvring setting down lower if it's a bigger craft, and that was just me pushing it back up because it's not so big. Once I'm up at the station, I refuel the base section of this craft, and the reason being is it has some more relay antenna on it. So we jettison it, because I know I have the Delta V to get back to Kerbal on the rest of the ship, and then we just punch this one up into a polar orbit, being very careful, almost, to avoid the station. And then just a heavy burn and go straight for polar orbit. And this will give a little relay for any ground stations that go down in the future. I'm considering putting another fuel station on here, but we'll see what happens. So, a little bit of time, I need a bit more equipment on this station, so the easiest way to get equipment is to recycle parts. So we push this, drain this booster of fuel, decouple it, and then, because I've got high level engineer, I recycle the entire thing in a one shot. And then just have a fun little observation of the ISS, which I think is a fairly good mock-up of it. The other booster will be going as well as soon as it's out of fuel. But now we have more missions, so I decided to test a launcher that, yeah, it's not streamlined, but it's got a bit of a purpose. And as you can tell, this was a testing launch, but I do have a mission on board, and the mission is simply a suborbital flight, a safe suborbital flight, funnily enough, for this little particular Kerbal. So we just go straight up and straight back down, and then all I do is use the thruster. Once everything's been destroyed off the bottom, luckily I've still got a thruster, and I use that to decelerate. This is pretty much your Blue Origin idea, but with a slightly more intact craft. And the reason for that actual launcher is just as a test module. It's something that was designed to be reusable. Obviously that hasn't happened for this one, and I lost a lot of funds in that, but in general it's supposed to be reusable. And then we just get this down. This is my biggest gripe with KSP autopilot stuff, is that they don't have a setting that says up instead of radial out and all that jazz. And I can't be bothered opening the one in MechJab that says the same thing. But now, as you can see here, we have a few tourists that need a high G adventure. So I just took my little test bed and launched it into orbit. And lost another craft because I'm an idiot. But we're just going to punt this thing up into orbit. It has enough thrust to be able to knock out a few Kerbals, so that's our intention. But I also need to do a little bit of manoeuvring. I need to go to one of my old ships and expand it. So we just do this part first, then release our launcher, our good old knocker outer. And my staging messes up, so yeah, a little bit of adjusting here. And punt it retrograde and switch back to the main ship, and then we head this out to the that I've created, and all we have to do is expand its capacity, and that's it. I think we had to have an engineer on board, I'm not quite sure. I can't see my thing there. But basically, yeah, I've just got to dock to this, and everything else in the contract was already on this particular ship, so once I dock this, I increase the amount of people that can be on it, the amount of Kerbals, and yeah, contract passed. So that's all we do. We literally get this thing up here, dock it on, undock it, and away we go. Nice and simple. Now while we're up here, we grab a little bit of science, and then we just undock and away. As simple as you can get. And as you can see, I'm using my manoeuvre nodes as well. I'm trying to limit the amount of fuel I'm using, but at the same time, I want to make sure I land back at the KSC, and I want to do it fairly easily. And I'm trying to get it in the daylight side, but yeah, we'll see what happens. But here we go again. So as you can see, orientate the right way, and then time warp flips the thing over again. But it is stable when it's not in time warp, which, I don't know, strange and unusual. But yet another safe landing, which is quite good, and we got a bit of money from those contracts, so that's always helpful. So now we go bigger. Now this is something I've been messing about with for a while. These rockets there are procedural boosters, procedural tank. However, the ship that's inside the fairing is something interesting, and this is actually because I've taken those EVE missions and I want to complete them. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to throw a whole load of people out to orbit, and I'm going to use the cryo mod, which is the deep freeze mod, to freeze everybody on the way out. And the actual engine I'm using for this is pretty interesting. It's not something I've really used before, and I had a lot of problems trying to get it to work because I didn't really understand it. But it is Nearty's Far Future mod, which if you're looking for it, you can find, I believe, on it. You can find it on the forums, but it's not under releases. I think it's in the add-on testing. I can never remember what it is. But it is genius. It's not a fully developed mod, it's not properly released yet, but it is up for people to download. And that engine that you can see just in front of the Rockomax boosters, or Rockomax tanks, that is essentially an engine that carries its own fuel but has very low delta V. It has over 100,000 DV, but at a very low rate, so you can't make a big ship attached to it. So this is literally a command pod and a cryo pod, and that's all that's going to happen. And as you can see here, I was trying to do that boost with the last tank, but I needed to use some RCS to get it made up. Unfortunately, when I jumped through my transition zone between Kerbal and the moon, it changed where I should have been going, and I had to adjust. And this is where my problems came with this mod. So what you have to do is you have to charge the engine up and then put your throttle up and activate it. If your throttle's at 0, it'll literally activate, deactivate, discharge all at the same time, and you'll have to recharge it, and it takes an awful lot to charge up. So once it's charged, it needs to be activated and kept burning until you let go, which causes problems with trying to work out your delta V, the beginning of your burn, and all sorts of other issues. But in general, I absolutely love it because it has such a high DV for such a small thing. So once we've done our first burn, we get everybody into the freezing, except for the pilot, and the pilot's going to stay awake until the next burn as we're going past Kerbal again to slingshot out into the system. So it's a very interesting system. But here we go, I'm launching another little ScanSat probe and micro relay into orbit of Lathe. And as you can see here, just getting a couple of satellites up so that we have a good sort of look around Kerbal. And then this is a little bit of a different system. This is, I was going again for something that is bigger, and this was not supposed to stay around Lathe. And with a little bit of a time warp mistake, which I'm sure everybody's made, I end up back in the atmosphere on the way down. And as anybody that knows KSB knows that ion engines cannot handle this, and I'm scuppered. And I noticed something with the way that these solar panels work is that they're trying to rotate to the sun, obviously, and I can't control that. But at the same time, if I rotate the craft, I can get them to make the craft glide slightly. So what I end up doing is playing about with this thing and trying to glide it into a landing, because having a relay on the surface can also help in some ways if you have lower abilities for relaying stuff about. So I figured I would try and land it intact. And as you can see here, I'm managing to make it glide using that ion engine to almost no effect whatsoever. But we can glide slightly. And then our landing, yeah, no solar panels, we're scuppered. But, ah well. So, again. This time I do it properly and I go for a pro grade launch, which gives me a bit more delta V to play with, and I get out of the atmosphere because I'm paying attention this time. So we open up our solar panels, yet again, near these mods, near future electrical. Nope, near future solar, that's the one. And yeah, so we have a light little relay. My idea for this is to actually put it into a polar orbit of Joule. But now we're back at Kerbal and playing with some of our new parts. So this is the engine from OPT Spaceplanes, along with the wings and a few other things, but in the form of a small Mark II drone. And this is just a basic science drone to gather some science from around Kerbal that I haven't really had before. And as I'm doing this, I see a bit of wreckage and I come up with a really stupid idea to try and land in the water. And I land only breaking one solar panel. This also has RTGs on it. It has one RTG on it. But after a while I managed to make the thing sink to the bottom because it's heavy. So I thought, well, if I can't take readings on the water, maybe I can take the readings from the seabed. So I float this thing down over 1,000 meters and actually gather some science from the seabed, which I thought was pretty funny. And we do get the science from it, so it's an idea if you can't gather science from above. But yeah, so now the entire point of this engine is that it takes in matter and launches it out the back using nothing but electricity, so that's exactly what we're doing underwater. It doesn't move as well, it moves very sluggishly, but it works. So we head back to land, or we head forward to land because I'm still going further round. And I decide to take some more readings from the shore and essentially rinse and repeat this process, and I keep doing this on a few different places going round the local area, sort of. But after a while of flying along, I decide to try and land in the mountains, and as you can imagine, one big bounce and then yeah, the signature explosion. So back out to Lathe. Now this is my newest monstrosity. Again, this is built mainly using OPT space planes, but this is a bit of a resource harvester. And I've sort of created it so that I can have a portable resource base and a bit of an exploration around about the planet with some Kerbals. So as you can see there, it's a very strange amalgamation. It's also fairly heavy, but it's not designed to leave atmosphere. However, it is VTOL, and in launching it, I lose my launch pad. And then, now this flew perfectly untested, but it starts kicking back on me. And it lands upside down and I lose two of my control surfaces, then another two, and yeah. Damn it. So we head back to Kerbal, we launch a new ship, Now I was aiming for an SSTO using this new Estonian launcher, and I pretty much made one, but I could get to orbit no more. I had no delta V left once I was in orbit, and I had to come back down with RCS. So this was made with a little bit of a booster just to get it up off of the ground. And I figured I'd try to complete some contracts while I was in it. So we're up rescuing more Kerbals. This seems to be the usual. Grab a little Kerbal out, head them back. Voila. And then I'm aiming for the next ship to do my second Kerbal thing, and I run out of delta V. And slide straight past them and have no ability to correct my orbit. And then lose a bit of footage due to a small crash. But yeah, we get back down. We haven't rescued the second Kerbal, but the craft's intact and we recovered all of it, which is good. So it's just the fuel that's a bit of an issue. So finally we are back with our little launcher going to Eve. Now, as I've said before, I've had a bit of problems with this engine because I didn't know how it was working, but in the end I got it sussed. And essentially you're managing charging it up first, then activating it at the right point with your throttle open somewhat or all the way. And once you get the hang of it, it's quite easy to use, and obviously the Delta V payoff is brilliant. Using a smaller command module, this thing would be really efficient, especially when you're mixing it with the cryo mods, so that you can freeze your Kerbals, which is exactly what I've done. As soon as I make an adjustment burn just as I leave the solar system, we get a pilot frozen, and then it's just drifting out to Eve, and it has a probe core on this, so we can wake them up then and there. So that'll be in the future. Here we go, just freezing them, and there we go, an unmanned craft. So like and subscribe, and I shall see you for the next episode. Bye!